Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor. This is the August 14th, 2024 meeting of the Brighton Town Board. Welcome. Whether you're here in the room in person or joining us remotely, we're glad to have you. We will be beginning the open forum portion of our meeting very shortly. The open forum is the portion of the meeting where members of the public have the opportunity to share their comments with the town board. I will give instructions in a little more detail on how the open forum works once we get there. But I will say that if you are watching us, for example, on YouTube, watching us remotely, you will have to go to the Zoom link in order to participate in the open forum. Probably most of us by now know how to log into Zoom, but there are instructions on how to do that on the Town of Brighton webpage, which is www.townofbrighton.org. As we have done for many years now, the town board meetings are accessible to the deaf and hard of hearing community. We have our ASL interpreters and we have our regulars, Allie and Heather. It's great to have you here tonight. Thank you very much for the service you provide. The agenda for tonight's meeting, if you're here in person, is on the back table. If you are watching us remotely, the agenda, and again, and all those materials are available on the town webpage. I would ask that everyone rise if you are able to rise, and we'll start the meeting with the pledge. Councilmember Corrado, if you could lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I was hoping we were going to have a special guest here tonight because we are celebrating Women's Equality Day. And hopefully Ms. Anthony will be able to join us. But she hasn't been able to get here yet. So I will, in any event, talk a little bit about Women's Equality Day and then read the proclamation. And if we can't present it to Ms. Anthony tonight, we will do so in the future. Women's Equality Day is celebrated each year on August 26th. That date in honor of the adoption of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution on August 26th, 1920. The 19th Amendment, of course, prohibited states, or for that matter, the federal government, from denying the right to vote based on gender. A number of states had already granted women the right to vote, starting, anybody know what the first state was? Close. Wyoming. Wyoming was the first state to, I believe in 1876, to give women the right to vote. At a time when access to voting rights is still under attack in some quarters, it's more important than ever that we observe Women's Equality Day and other commemorations of the expansion of voting rights. Again, I was hoping that Ms. Anthony was going to be here, but since she is not, I'm going to read this proclamation. Whereas just over a century ago, the courageous and dedicated women who marched, advocated, and organized for the right to vote finally saw their efforts become a reality when on August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was certified and the right for women to vote was realized. And whereas in the decades that followed, the revered right to vote has bolstered and empowered generations of women to stand up, speak out, and guide our nation towards legal, economic, and social equity. Whereas we celebrate the anniversary of this hard-won achievement and pay tribute to the trailblazers and suffragists like Susan B. Anthony, who moved us closer to a more just and prosperous future. And whereas Women's Equality Day reminds us that we must continue to expand the notion of equality and protect our constitutional rights as they may be stripped away, just as the constitutional right to abortion has been eliminated, setting in motion a cascade of consequences. And whereas while we herald the accomplishments of the litany of women who secured women's right to vote, we are acutely aware that great challenges still remain for women and girls everywhere, and we must commit to continue the fight for true equality. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and the members of the Brighton Town Council do hereby celebrate the achievements of the women from our past and our present, and ask all Brightonians to actively support the cause of gender equality and recognize Women's Equality Day, August 26, 2024. This proclamation is signed this 14th day of August 2024 by myself and by my colleagues on the town board, and I'm sure many, if not all of you know, that Barbara Blaisdell, Brighton resident Barbara Blaisdell, portrays Susan B. Anthony at events of many kinds, and we were expecting Miss Anthony here tonight to join us to accept this proclamation, but we will make sure that she gets it at a date in the future. Okay, we will now begin the open forum portion of the meeting. We hold an open forum at the start of every town board meeting. The open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board concerning any matter relating to the town, whether or not it's an item on our agenda tonight. If you're here for any of the 4 public hearings on the agenda tonight, and to make sure you know what those are, one is the proposed incentive zoning and rezoning application by Home Leasing and Providence Housing for the proposed affordable Westgate Apartments project on a portion of the former Rochester Psychiatric Center property located on Elmwood Avenue. That's one public hearing. The second one is the proposed demolition of property located at 185 Kimbark Road due to its unsafe condition, is a second public hearing. The third are amendments to the town's flood control law. And finally, the fourth is the proposed local law concerning demonstration and special events permits. If you are here for any of those matters, I encourage you to wait until the item is called during the public hearing section of the meeting. That way your comments will be included in the record of the public hearing for those matters. Now, in just a minute, we'll open up the open forum. If you're here in person for the open forum, I will just ask that you raise your hand and I will try to call on you all in some order. When I do call on you, I would ask you to come up to the podium to speak. If you are participating remotely, I'll ask you to use the raised hand function on Zoom to indicate that you want to speak. And again, you must participate. The only way we can get you into the meeting is if you are participating on Zoom. So please do that. All speakers during the open forum, whether in person or remotely, please state your name and address before speaking. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. and I will give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. If you have questions for us tonight, we may not be able to answer those questions, particularly if your question relates to a matter that is not on the agenda this evening. But our goal here tonight and during the open forum that we hold at every town board meeting is to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with the board and for us to be able to listen to your words. Therefore, we do have some rules during the open forum. Please direct your remarks to the town board and not to the room or other speakers. Please refrain from personal attacks and from outbursts of any kind, including applause, boos, or similar disruption during the open forum, out of respect for the speakers and out of respect for the time of everyone here tonight. Also, out of respect for people in the room who may not be able to see, we do not allow signs to be displayed during town board meetings, including during the open forum. Persons who do not follow these rules will be warned. Repeated failure to follow these rules or failure to follow other directions from the chair may result in your speaking privileges being ended, being directed to leave the meeting, or the early termination of the open forum. So with that, I will ask, is there anyone here in the room that would like to speak during the open forum this evening? Former council member Ms. Novros, we'll start with you.
Good evening. The town government in Brighton
Louise,
has...
would you please state your name and address?
Sorry, my name is Louise Novros, 116 Seminole Way. And what else?
That's it.
Okay. The town government in Brighton has decided to rid the town hall of its asbestos. I agree that this is an essential and necessary plan, but that does not, however, make it a necessity to remove the town's swimming pool and then to compensate for this by building a splash park on the grassy field behind Town Hall and immediately behind 8 homes on Seminole Way and 2 homes at the end of Sylvan Road, all of which back up to the field. The location and size of the current pool fits the needs and wants of our community and does not infringe on the peace and quiet of the adjoining residents. We believe that repairing or replacing any part of the swimming pool would be far more economical than demolishing it, re-landscaping the area the pool was currently sitting on, and then constructing a splash park. Splash parks do not serve all age groups, nor are they required to have lifeguards on duty to ensure the safety of the children who use them. A splash park would be more appropriate in a large park such as Buckland or Meridian, not in an area next to residential properties. In addition, the town is also planning to cut down many of the mature trees which line the grassy field behind the police station and enjoyed by 18 homes on Seminole Way and Sylvan. What happened to the town's Tree City USA membership? This certainly doesn't comply with your promise to that organization. The plan also seeks to eliminate or realign more than 27 parking spaces. Most of the spaces are on the library side of the property and are constantly in use and needed by library patrons and staff. The planned elimination of all 11 parking spaces directly behind the rear entrance to Town Hall would be a terrible injustice to those people who are handicapped and need to use that entrance for access to the Town Hall elevator. Spaces are also being eliminated in front of the police department building as well, and we don't understand why. It doesn't make any sense. New high beam lighting in and around the parking areas are being considered, and yet this is another intrusion to the nearby homes, especially if the large trees are removed. I could go on, but I'll let some of the other people address you. Please take these remarks seriously. As a whole, the community is very upset by these proposals and deserves answers as well as reconsideration on your part. And I have a copy of my statement to hand out to each of you if you want it.
Thank you, Louise. Generally, we try to just let speakers talk, but there were a number of statements, Louise, in your statement that are not entirely accurate. So I think it's important for the community, for people who are here to talk about this, but to talk about other things. First and most important, it is not, someone else asked me this separately, the plan would not cut the trees down behind the police station. There was an early version of a plan that talked about doing that. That is not going to be done. Louise, can I finish? Thank you. Space there is banked for potential future parking, but honestly, I do not anticipate that area being used for parking. So if Louise and anybody else that is under the impression that the town is going to take those trees down for parking, it is not. The overall plan for parking will keep the number of parking spaces approximately the same as it is now. There will be some spaces eliminated in the rear of the building because there will be a small addition that's being put in for facilities maintenance space for our facilities department. And yes, some of the parking is being reconfigured. We're not, I didn't catch the number, I think you may have said 27. We're not removing 27 spaces near the library. I don't know where that came from, but that is not the plan. The overall plan for Town Hall is to keep approximately the same number of spaces, to add some greenery, because we want there to be a more green feel to the Town Hall campus. And there will be some, as you alluded, some reconfiguration of the traffic flow for a couple reasons. One, the library requested a reconfiguration of the book drop, where people return books. The effort there is to make that a safer and easier vehicle movement to go in and return books. But second is an attempt to try to do some traffic calming. We don't want people, particularly on the police side where you have a fairly long straightaway, there's concern about people's speed picking up, and we know that people are crossing there to get to either Town Hall or to the Public Safety Wing. So some of those reconfigurations are intended to reduce internal traffic speed and promote safety in the parking lot. So I hope that helps clarify some of the information about this project. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board on any matter during the open forum? Yes.
My name is Lauren Macy. I live at 56 Oak Lane. I'm here tonight to represent the many residents of this town who would like to keep and update the town pool. Word has been circulating, although not documented on an official source, that there is a movement to tear out the current pool and replace it with a splash pad. I could not find this posted on the Town of Brighton's website as required by the New York State open meeting law. On canvassing the neighborhood and gathering signatures on a petition, which now has 432 and is continuing to increase, it was found that people favor having this swimming pool and that they were unaware of its demolition. A splash pad could be added as well, but a pool is widely used by more residents. Pools offer many more aquatic activities to a larger age range. For instance, it can be used by young children to teens, adults of all ages, including senior citizens. A splash pad, on the other hand, appeals to toddlers and preschoolers. Very rarely do adults use splash pads except to cool off when they are with their children. Splash pads offer little or no recreational value to the rest of our residents. An outdoor swimming pool is a valuable asset to a town's recreation venues. The current pool is situated in a neighborhood. It's easily accessed by walking, biking via the sidewalks, the streets, and the fact that its location is right off Elmwood makes it easily accessed by the rest of the community. As far as staffing concerns, lifeguards can be seniors in high school as well as college students under adult supervision. Hours could be adjusted in mid-August as some lifeguards would return to college at that time. The cost is a worthwhile investment in improving the quality of our life in our community. A pool is a variable resource. It provides recreation, improved health and wellness, as well as water safety programs and classes. Swim lessons. They're currently not offered, but could be a source of revenue. Water safety is vital. Drowning is a #1 killer of toddlers and young children. Offering swim programs to our children helps prevent the tragic drownings that happen every summer. Not keeping the Brighton pool would be a lost opportunity for improving the overall quality for Brighton's residents. The outdoor pool sets our town apart. The cost to keep the pool has yet to be fully investigated, but return great value to the community. So what are we asking? We, the numerous people who stand behind saving the pool, would like to see the pool demolition be tabled until further information can be obtained, such as 1, actual estimates done according to the protocol for both options, the pool repair as well as a new pool. 2, surveys of the residents' needs and preferences for improved aquatic activities at that site. And 3, additional means of funding, such as through grants, donations, or other available opportunities.
30
Thank you.
seconds. Thank you.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Miss Anthony.
I understand there's a lovely petition for me to pick up this evening, and I couldn't pass it up.
Miss Anthony, it is such a privilege to have you here in Town Hall. Let's come to the podium where we'll have, Miss Anthony, are you familiar, you're familiar with the microphones? This will allow people, even on the internet, which we'll talk about, I'll tell you more about someday.
He's speaking another language now.
But people around the world will be able to see that you are here in Town Hall in the town of Brighton for this important Women's Equality Day event. I'm so glad you could join us. What I'd like to do is read again at least a portion of this proclamation, present it to you, and then give you the opportunity to speak as only you can do.
Oh, well, you needn't do that if you're in a
Well,
hurry.
let me just, I will read just a very short part of it. Whereas just over a century ago, the courageous and dedicated women like yourself who marched, advocated, and organized for the right to vote finally saw their efforts become a reality when on August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was certified and the right of women to vote was finally realized. And whereas, while we herald the accomplishments of the litany of women who secured women's rights to vote, we are acutely aware that great challenges still remain for women and girls everywhere, and we must commit to continue the fight for true equality. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, William W. Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and the members of the Town Council here tonight do hereby celebrate the achievements of the women from our past and our present, and ask all Brightonians to actively support the cause of gender equality by celebrating Women's Equality Day, August 26, 2024. It is a privilege, Miss Anthony, to present this proclamation to you, and I would be happy to give you the opportunity to speak to Brighton and the world.
Thank you very much,
I
sir.
think we have someone taking photographs too, so
Oh, wow.
let's get a chance to. Good.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening. I won't take much of your time because I know, as all good citizens are doing, you're busy objecting and proclaiming things, which is very important. I once said that there would come a time when women would serve on the Supreme Court and in the highest offices of the land. And I come back to you in spirit this evening, delighted to know that one of the candidates for your presidency, our presidency, if you'll allow me that, is indeed a woman. And that is so important. I must scold you to say that it seems to me that you took way too long to get to this point. But I do think it's important that women are recognized as the equal, brilliant people that they are, that we are. Mostly, I must invite all of you to vote. I'm absolutely ashamed when I come back in spirit. You know, I live over at Mount Hope Cemetery these days. And when I come back in spirit and discover the low percentage of votes in this country, you know, women here and elsewhere died for that right, and so did men. And in fact, this country was founded on that purpose. So I encourage you not only to vote yourselves, but to get everyone else you know out to vote. And that is the only way you will secure the ability to show up at meetings like this and have your say. And with that, I will let you get at it. But I just wanted to come by and thank you very much for this. It is certainly for all of the women, of which there were thousands. And if you're not familiar with exactly the details of why August 26th is in fact declared and has been for quite a while Women's Equality Day, then I urge you, your homework is to go and look that up. Now, I have heard from other people of such a thing as the net or inter something. And whatever that is, go to your local library and look it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miss Anthony, for being a presence in our world still today.
Indeed. And I'll always haunt you, so.
I would note that Miss Anthony sometimes appears and speaks about issues such as these with a gentleman by the name of Frederick Douglass, who also is, of course, a son of Rochester and who is ably portrayed in this community by Mr. Carlos Merriweather. Mr. Merriweather and Ms. Blaisdell, in those two personas that they take on, are living proof for our children, our grandchildren, and really for all of us of the importance of the causes that they advocated for. So again, Miss Anthony, I know you're still out there. Thank you so much for being a part of our meeting tonight. And now we'll go back to the open forum. Is there anyone who would like to address the board during the open forum?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Marianne O'Connor. I live at 123 Seminole Way. I have been a Brighton resident for 37 years. In all of that time, one of our most popular, beloved aspects of community has been the town swimming pool. Recently, I became aware that as part of the plan to remove asbestos in the town hall, many other changes have been included that impact all of us, with a detrimental to many, as well as costly and possibly unnecessary. Some of those changes are as follows: permanently close the town swimming pool, add splash pad directly behind 6 homes on Seminole Way, tear up the adequate sidewalk that goes from Sylvan to the library to add one that is an even greater enlargement. Take away I don't know about the parking now because I'm confused on this. My information has come from the aerial presentation of what the changes are going to be. That parking places will be taken away from the library and more parking places will be added to the area behind the police department, which would mean and necessitate a drainage or sewage overflow in that area, which seems to be right in the area where the trees are. Enlarge and move the dumpsters to be closer to the same homes on Seminole Way where the proposed parking spaces are. That will make them farther away from where they are most used, near the library and town hall. Remove many trees and bushes in this area. All of the above, except the asbestos project, seem to be added expenses for the taxpayers, limit rather than enhance recreational services, and reduce a beautiful, beautiful green space. I request the town to at least reconsider all of these additional changes for the following reasons. The pool is open to all and can be used by people of all ages. The splash pad will be of interest to a much smaller group and will cause many problems: noise, gathering of boisterous groups, healthcare risks, high maintenance of the splash pad area are but a few anticipated. A splash pad will also negatively impact very greatly the property values on Sylvan Road and Seminole Way. The other changes I've mentioned, such as relocating dumpsters, adding lighting and parking close to the residential properties, and adding a drainage system, will be very problematic for Seminole Way and Sylvan Road in particular.
30 seconds.
I request a reprieve of all these changes and ask the board to reconsider and mostly to provide the public with much more information about these plans with a much more open format for the public to understand, discuss, and communicate about these changes before they are implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, there seems to be a lot of misinformation out there, and let me just say, I mean, we're not infallible here in terms of getting information and communicating. But I think it's important because there is obviously misinformation that is being spread incorrectly. We heard some from the first speaker, and I've heard some now. The sidewalk is not going to be eliminated. The sidewalk from Town Hall back to Sylvan will not be eliminated. That's an important connection. It connects us to our bicycle boulevard. So that sidewalk is going to be there. The plan is not, again, the plan is not to install a splash pad behind homes on Seminole. The intended plan is to install the splash pad exactly where the swimming pool is today. Well, that is, that is the plan that, it's certainly my intention. I think it's the expectation of the board that that is where it would go. It would also involve the replacement of that old decrepit pavilion that's there being replaced by a new pavilion through the generous donation of a Brighton resident. So again, it's really important. The sidewalk would stay, and the splash pad will not be behind houses on Seminole. Is there anyone else? It will be in the location where the swimming pool is, which is closer to houses on Sylvan, yes. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board during the open forum? Sir.
Thank you. Paul Nipolito, 155 Eastland Avenue. And have two questions.
Sure.
First question is the sidewalks in homeacres appear to be in some areas in dire need of some repair work, and I would just like to know, is there anything scheduled, or are there any upcoming plans for some sidewalk work in Homeacres?
I may have to turn to our Commissioner of Public Works, Jim Sprague, and we may have to get back to you on that.
Yeah.
What I can tell you, though, is that sidewalks in Homeacres are part of the town
Right.
sidewalk district. And through that district, funds are raised for maintenance. The work on those sidewalks in various parts of town has begun. Jim, do you know whether there are any plans for the Homeacres neighborhood this year?
Excuse me, no, off the top of my head, I don't know specifically.
We'll get back to you on that.
Thank you, I
Mr.
appreciate
Boyd.
it, yeah. And a question to the new development work that's going on where the gas station?
Yes.
That's been closed. Has there been any discussion on what might happen to the traffic pattern? I don't know if my information is up to date, but it seemed like a fairly large combination gas station, and I'm going to call it a convenience store. I don't know if that's correct.
Yes.
If that's going to be put in there, and I'm concerned about when you're heading east on Elmwood, where the lanes shift down, it's going to seem like that's going to be kind of a bottleneck there, and especially if someone is trying to make a left turn into the plaza. So I'm just curious if there's been any discussion about how that might affect or what the plans are. And again, I know state road, county road, whatever, but just seems like that's going to, people coming out of that place, don't know. Just kind of a little concerned about it and just curious.
Sure. You're correct in that the plan is that it's a quick lease, which is a chain that operates convenience stores and gas stations. There would also be EV charging stations included as part of that. The plan, and the town board had some pretty significant discussions about this, and they've also been before others of our boards. Right now, you have a gas station there, and yes, it's got driveways there very close to not only the Monroe Avenue side, but also on Elmwood. The plan is consistent with more recent urban planning techniques. You see most gas stations, the pumps hit you in the face. That's what you see. The plan here, and consistent with what we're trying to do in a number of places, is to move the retail closer to the street, to energize, street traffic, and the pumps would be in the back where they're somewhat less visible from the 12 corners. I think what that would mean is, although I'm not, without looking directly at the two plan, the current plan and what would be coming, I can't say exactly how the driveways are configured, but I believe in general the access is actually a little bit farther from the immediate 12 corners. But again, it's a project. Obviously, the mobile station has been there for a long time and was in increasingly difficult conditions. So that's the plan going forward, and construction has recently begun there.
If I may, Supervisor,
Thank you, yeah.
I'll just add a little detail to the traffic pattern, enhancing what the supervisor has shared. Indeed, the entrances to that property will be further away from the triangle of 12 corners, and it's reducing the number of curb cuts entering that space.
Yes.
So traffic will be much less chaotic in circulating through that area and much more controlled. And the site plan does take into account the traffic on Elmwood and the traffic on Monroe Avenue and which way it's going. So
I'm sorry, one last question. Is that plan available for
Yes.
it is somewhere on the town website, and if you would like to be in touch with me, I can help you find it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board during the open forum this evening? Yes.
is Catherine Zaromskis. I live at 114 Monroe Parkway. I don't have a ton more to add what my fellow Brightonians have already said about the issue of the town pool, except to say that I've been living here in Brighton since 2015, and I am a mother, and we have found it to be a wonderful community resource and one that we would be very, very sorry to lose. A splash pad simply does not serve the same kind of recreational and communal opportunities as a swimming pool does. Anecdotally, I will say that I was at the pool this afternoon. There were about 20 people there. They ranged in age from very small children to teenagers to adults, both with and without children. And the pool just offers so many kind of wonderful communal and kind of physical activity service to the community. I'm also frustrated with the lack of transparency, it seems, about this decision to turn the turn the pool into the splash pad. And I would just sort of echo what my fellow citizens have said about tabling this plan until there can be more discussion, and allowing the Brighton citizens to be better informed about the reasons behind this choice. I'll add that when I was at the pool today, I was talking to some people. Nobody at the pool was aware of this plan, and they were sorry to hear that this is what was going forward. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Yes, can't see who that is, but come on up.
Hi, my name is Megan Donnelly, and I live at 109 Monroe Parkway. And I was concerned also about the issue of the swimming pool. I feel it's an important resource for the town, and I feel it's something that could, if it is in need of repair and is getting to be something that is going to need some care and money, I feel it's a worthwhile investment. And I'd also like to ask that the proposition be paused, or at least to let people discuss the issue. And I also don't think very many people in the town are aware of aware of the plan, and I think it would cause quite a few people. I think people would feel that they had not been informed suitably. I think there should be something on the town website about the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, in the back.
Hi guys. Mike Loeb, and I live on Vienna Wood. Real quick, just on the pool issue, we've talked about it a lot. I don't think anybody will debate that a pool is a great place to hang out with kids and for adults, and recreational value is better than a splash pool. I guess the million-dollar or multi-million-dollar question here is, how much are we talking about ballpark tapping into Brighton's tax resources? I mean, until we have an estimate of whether this is cost prohibitive or just, a minor, if this is something that's going to affect every single one of our tax bills and put us behind in terms of the other projects that we can do. As much as I love our swimming pool and I love the idea of having it, and I have 3 boys that enjoy it thoroughly, I can't, in good faith, put the idea of having a swimming pool ahead of the importance of the education of our children. And if we're going to be taking tax dollars that would be better spent in other ways and putting them towards having a pool, I think it's important to be practical with our funds and know what we're talking about. So I think we're being, all of us, probably a little preemptive in our speaking about this until we have a number that we can, an estimate, a ballpark of how much we're talking, so that we know. Because if my tax bill is going to go up significantly, it's going to affect my opinions about this. And if it would be much more efficient to just use another pool in the area, then we'll get to it. Or if we're at the point where the cost of putting in a pool, or of repairing the pool that we have, would be better spent on putting in a full community center or something else of the kind that we can all enjoy, then we need to explore that. But I want to close by saying that I appreciate all that you guys do, and I have faith that this is well thought out and considered and will be addressed going forward. So that's
Thank
all
you.
I got. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Chantal. I've lived here all my life. I've pretty much grown up at the pool. Our kids use the pool. One thing that matters to me, also somebody is speaking, taking handicap spaces away. I think that matters because also a lot of people park at them who don't have a handicap pass. But with the pool, if it's astronomical, maybe we could do a fundraiser. As you're talking about with somebody helped with the pavilion, maybe us Brightonians can really, really care for a pool, can help fundraise, just in the future.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Hearing none, then can I have a motion, Chris, to approve the agenda?
Bill, I move that we approve the agenda.
Second?
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Next, we go to the public hearings, and we do have 4 public hearings tonight. I went through, mentioned what they are. The proposed incentive zoning for the affordable housing apartments on Elmwood Avenue, the proposed demolition of 185 Kimbark Road, the proposed local law to amend Chapter 113 of the Town Code with respect to demonstration and special events permits, and the public hearing on a proposed amendment to Chapter 211 of the Town Code concerning flood damage prevention, and that's the order that those public hearings will be held. So, again, before we start the hearings, just a little talk about process. I want to remind everybody here in the audience that if you would like to speak during any of those public hearings, when I call them, please raise your hand. You know what? Before I do that, I realized I did not, I don't see anybody with their hand raised for the open forum on Zoom, but I will ask our Bridget, who's monitoring that, if there is anybody that we didn't get a chance to hear from during the, on the open forum, we'll take them now. I see that she has admitted someone, and if anybody who is here for the Zoom would like to speak, please use the Zoom raised hand function. They may be here for the public hearing, and that's fine too. I don't see anybody with their hand raised, so we'll continue with the public hearing. And again, if you want to participate on a public hearing remotely, you can, but you have to do it on Zoom. For the public hearings, again, it's important. We'll ask you to state your name and address for the record of the hearing before speaking. Please address your comments to the town board and not to the room or to other speakers. Please refrain from personal attacks of any kind and from outbursts, including but not limited to applause, boos, or any similar disruption during the public hearings, out of respect for the speakers and out of respect for the time of everybody that's taken the time to come out tonight. Again, we do not allow signs to be displayed during town board meetings, including during public hearings. Persons who do not follow these rules will be warned. Repeated failure to follow these rules or failure to follow other directions from the chair may result in your speaking privileges being ended early or being directed to leave the meeting. I don't anticipate having to do that, but in any event. Tonight we do have 4 public hearings, and the first public hearing is concerning the proposed incentive zoning and rezoning application made by Home Leasing and Providence Housing for the proposed Westgate Apartments project that's on Elmwood Avenue, and the environmental review of that project. That's the portion, by the way, of the Rochester Psychiatric Center, right there at the city line. Much of the Psych Center property is in the city, but a portion of it is in the town of Brighton. I will ask the town clerk, has the necessary legal notice been given for this public hearing?
Yes, Supervisor, notice was published in the July 31st edition of the Daily Record, and additionally, notice was mailed per our incentive zoning code by the developer at their expense.
Thank you. To, as I understand it, several hundred properties.
Seven something. Within 1,000 feet, yeah.
Thank you.
Box and a half of envelopes they got from me, so.
Notice having been given, I declare this public hearing to be open. I will start and ask the representatives of the developers of the project or the developers themselves if any of you would like to speak to this project, and then we will give members of the public the opportunity to speak. By the way, just so that everybody knows, and correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor, but I do not anticipate the board taking action on this matter tonight. We will hear what the public has to say, but not take action tonight. We'll consider it at a future meeting, likely at our next meeting.
That is correct, Supervisor.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Brett Garwood. I live at 300 Dale Road in Brighton. I'm the CEO of Home Leasing. I'm here with my colleague Adam Driscoll, and we have other members of our team here in case there's any questions. I won't go into detail about the project. Adam will give a very broad overview, but we've submitted to you very detailed materials about our proposed project, the incentives and the amenities that we are proposing. This is a project that we've been working on for about 5 years and are very eager to move it forward. We're excited about it. Home Leasing is a family-owned company. We are dedicated to improving the lives of our residents in the communities in which we serve, and we're a certified B Corporation. We especially like doing projects that don't just create affordable housing, but they're part of something larger, achieving some vision in the community, in the town, or in the city that we're working in. And this project provides exactly that opportunity. Just to be clear, are proposing a project in the town of Brighton, but it's adjacent to a very large city parcel with the Terrence Building, the former Psych Center. That is not what we are part of. We will be building roads inside the city, which have already been approved per the city's process. But all of our development is in Brighton. It can proceed without with whether or not whatever next happens in the Psych Center adjacent. We're excited to be part of a larger vision there, but we're independent of it, and I just wanted to make sure that is clear. We're happy to answer any questions as well, but I'll let Adam, my colleague Adam, talk a little bit about just a very broad overview of the project so everybody has it.
Thank you to the town board for hearing our rezoning application tonight. This proposed community, we are partnering with Providence Housing, who is a nonprofit here in Rochester with many communities, and they will serve as the property management company during operations. As Brett had mentioned, this development site is just under 10 acres of vacant land located here in the town of Brighton, and is part of a larger former New York State Hospital campus, which is in the city of Rochester that we're not part of. We do not own the land as of today. We would close on the property when we close on construction financing, which would most likely be in a couple of years, in 2026 or in that range. The proposal is 40 townhome units of 34 3-bedrooms and 6 2-bedrooms, and then further down the road or the street, an 80-unit multifamily building with 72 1-bedrooms and 8 2-bedrooms. We will continue to utilize the main entrance with the traffic light at Elmwood, and also the entrances at Sawgrass and Westfall, as well as the Science Parkway will be options. And we'll be adding a 4th option located where the road ends at St. John's Brickstone property. The entire community will be all electric. The multifamily building will also be built under the Passive House program, which strives to be a net zero building with high levels of insulation and mechanicals that are highly efficient. There is a small area with solar panels on the multifamily portion land. There will be some nice green space available for our residents, including a roof terrace on the main building, a playground, and not to mention the walking trail. We will also provide a community room that would be available for neighbors. It's just on a reserved basis, a fitness room, laundry hookups, and we are also pet friendly. As stated in the Envision Brighton 2020 plan under Sense of Community Policy Statement, Objective C, provide a balance in the type of affordability of housing for Brighton residents, employing smart growth principles that strategically encourage density and diversity of housing options in areas with ready access to local goods, services, and mass transit. In addition, Westgate Apartments, which is what we're calling it now, but we have mentioned this a couple times, we're definitely open to renaming it. Westgate Apartments advances the Envision Brighton 2020 plan stated vision and commitment to promote our sense of community and social equity, preserve and protect our environmental assets, support a vibrant economic climate, and ensure the public health, safety, and welfare for all. With that, I don't know if there's any additional questions with regards to our proposal.
Why don't we hear from any members of the public, and if they or if we have questions, we won't be shy. Is there anyone here in the room that would like to address the board during this public hearing? Come on up.
Mike Loeb again. Sorry, guys, I'll be quick with this one. I am, of course, eager to have diversity in Brighton and excited about the idea of low-income housing because I think it brings a different, I don't know if flavor is the right word, but different opportunity to an area that hasn't always been prevalent in Brighton. But my question when I look at projects like this, Providence Housing is currently involved in other communities in Rochester, I believe. And my question would be, sounds bad. What best way to say this? Is there any way we can compare the number of times in a given period that the police are called to housing projects like this compared to other apartment complexes in the area? Are we going to be bringing up more public safety issues by bringing a low-income housing? Can we compare the police calls to a Providence Housing to, say, an adjacent apartment complex in different communities, as well as looking at how those numbers compare to the different communities of this size in the Brighton area? The main thing that I'm interested in is just making sure that our safety is ensured and that the people who live in the low-income housing are safe and comfortable, and we're all contributing to this community. So I would ask that as we go about this from a public safety standpoint, we look briefly into that. Not that it's a uniform thing across the board, but just a thought of a way to judge the impact that this might have, or one of the possible impacts. Just a thought. I appreciate you guys again. Sorry. Thanks.
Affordable housing is an important part of a well-balanced community. It meets needs in the community. I am very confident in the abilities of the Brighton Police Department keeping this community safe as you have for years, and I'm appreciative of that. Yes, sir. Come on up.
My name is David Day, 147 Briarwood, and I've followed with great interest for 50 years the development of the Terrace Building and all the controversy swarming around that. I think there are elements of this project that I find exciting. It's good to see something happening to the property. I think I have two questions. One is it would really help with the publicity if we could see entrance access roads from Elmwood Brickstone people are rightly concerned about the impact of where exactly they're going to be. But I, for one, haven't seen any maps, and that would greatly, we're a very visual culture, and that would enhance our understanding and maybe lessen some concerns. There is what I call a pyramid, a big grassy knoll there. I believe it conceals a tunnel underground leading to the Terrence building. A lot of people don't know about that. And there's also, when it rains, the area is very swampy. So we've been concerned about what might be done, maybe an incentive, to repair the Highland Crossing Trail, because it's virtually impassable for 6 or 7 months of the year. And many of us hike and bike there. And all kinds of people access that trail, so it's a vital resource. My other concern is, will the garages of the proposed townhouses face the backyards of the bungalows? My illustrations don't answer that exactly. My guess is that maybe they will face away from that, but that would enhance the certainly the aesthetics. If the bungalow people, bungalonians, if they don't look out on somebody's garage door going up and down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And would the developer like to address either or both of those questions/comments?
Yes. With regards to the entrance, we aren't adding any new entrance. It's currently the existing entrances off of Elmwood where the street light, or the traffic light is, sorry. The other, I guess, new road will connect to the Bull's Head, I think, or Hammerhead of Brickstone, which was a previous easement. So there'll be an entrance where you can come in through St. John's Brickstone, down that road. But, and we had met with the residents at St. John's not too long ago for a second follow-up meeting, and we walked the site with some of the folks, and we wanted to make sure that they knew they can also, instead of having to come out where their current egress is to make a left, they will be able to utilize coming across over into this proposed development, using the Elmwood traffic light, or going down the Science Parkway to go to Sawgrass. So there was additional options as opposed to just having that one option currently. With regard to the water issue, we did talk a little bit about that on our walk. We think where there's maybe 2 areas. One area is on our part of the land where it starts to build. We think a catch basin, or I'm not talking engineering well, but a catch basin or 2 will help alleviate and catch that and divert it. And it was brought to our attention when we were walking with the residents on the trail. There's some pooling, but that might be alleviated with what we're designing as well. It might not be, but it's something that both of us and St. John's were aware of, so maybe it's something we could work together on. But
yeah, I had been aware of the ponding on the Highland Crossing Trail. And just to be clear, when you refer to the entrance to the traffic signal, you're referring to the traffic signal at Azalea, correct, which is in the city?
Correct. So there's 3 ways to get to our site. There will be 3 ways to get to our site, right? One is through Brickstone, which is that entrance, which was a requirement of their site plan approval to provide that access. That's already been determined as acceptable. Then we will provide access all the way through Science Parkway and access eventually through the city again to Azalea. So if you're at Brickstone, you now have 2 other ways to get, 3 other ways actually, because you can get through, down through the developmental disabled or developmental center, right?
Yes.
So there'll be 3 different ways to go to 3 different places if you currently live at Brickstone. So we think that this actually improves the traffic options for everyone. I will just mention that the site plan is totally available. It was submitted as part of all the documents. We're happy to provide it to anybody. It's probably on your website as well. So, and the garages do face away from the backyards. They front on the new road that's in the city of Rochester. So our townhomies will be looking at your bungalonians.
Does that help answer your question?
Well, the garages will face the backyard of the bungalow?
No.
They won't. So they're facing.
They're fronting the new road.
Can I, because this is a public hearing,
The garages will be facing towards where the tower is now, so, yep.
Fronting our road, our new road. Right. Our backyard and your backyard.
Thank you. Sir, do you have your hand up? Absolutely. Come on up. Thank you, Sergeant.
I'm David Davis. I live in Brickstone, 1315 Elmwood Avenue on the 3rd floor. I think it's a wonderful plan. I have just one serious concern with the piece of literature that I read said that the laundry equipment would be on each floor of the new structure. And I think that for me and for a lot of other people, I have urinary incontinence. I'm up many times during the night, and having to go to a floor, to a laundry equipment on the floor is very, very difficult. And so I would recommend that the plan be rewritten to include laundry equipment, washer, dryer, to be installed in each apartment like it is currently in Brickstone. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to address that, Mr. Garwood, sure.
I thank you for the comment. Yeah, so the multifamily building will have laundry rooms on every floor, and the townhomes have units in every laundry equipment in every unit. You know, that helps us control expenses. It would be difficult to provide laundry for every unit. But what I wanted to say is we didn't talk about one aspect of our program, and that is that a portion of these units will also come with supportive services in partnership with Providence Housing and Catholic Family Services for seniors who have needs for assistance in acts of daily living. These are apartments for independent living, but a portion of our people will get services so that if they have issues with cleaning and dealing with their own daily lives, they will get that assistance in person on site. So that's going to be helpful for some of those issues.
Thank you.
I could not understand.
Sir, okay, Mr. Garwood, he said he couldn't.
A portion of our units will have services from a nonprofit that helps seniors live independently to help them with activities that they're not able to do. So, for example, if they have difficulty of the nature you described, they might get some assistance with that, with the aides in their units.
Is there anyone? Yes, come on up.
Whoops, sorry. Hello, I'm Bonnie Yanni. I live at 154 Meadowbrook, which is near the Azalea Light. I was concerned when I read this letter that Brighton is 42% rental properties. I found that quite high. I would like to know with this new project, what kind of revenue comes in from rental property and how does that affect the tax base for Brighton? Is my question inappropriate?
No, not at all. I wasn't sure whether Mr. Garwood wanted to address it.
So, in order to keep our rents affordable, we will be requesting a payment in lieu of taxes, but tax revenue overall will increase compared to what is currently provided to the town. In the documents we provided, we gave an example of what we are proposing, and I'm just trying to find it. And we're proposing that 7% of our revenue goes for paying property taxes, which would be approximately $93,000 a year in increased tax revenue to Brighton. But that's something that we will negotiate and has to be specifically approved by the town.
And just to clarify, because I think I heard you say 93,000 to Brighton, or is that the all-in Brighton?
The answer to that question is we negotiate the pilot with the town of Brighton, and they decide how to spend their own money.
Okay, I wanted to be clear on that. Thank you. Yes, come on up.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Colby. I live at 1156 Johns Arbor Drive West, and I'm just concerned about the trees on the west side of Highland, the Highland Trail, and as it makes a curve around to the east. Is that property also involved? That's all.
Maybe it would.
When we had walked with the residents on the trail and the site, we did share that we will do as best we can. A lot of the trees and vegetation are not doing well, but if there's trees that we can keep and create that tree line and keep the tree line, we will definitely try to do that. We heard that from several residents, and yes, so this is where the trail kind of starts to turn. This is where the multifamily building would be back further. There'll be a lot of buffer green area here, and this is the tree line that we were talking about. We will try to also plant trees where possible, and like I mentioned, we'll try to keep the ones that are there if at all possible based on the site work and how the properties line up facing each other.
I don't know if it would be helpful if you'd like to display those or anything else on the board over there, or another easel. Oh, maybe so. Dan just suggested maybe if you put it in the lobby.
Be more comfortable for people if they want to take time to look at it, rather than be on the edge during the meeting. It'd be easier to gather in the lobby.
And also right there where our interpreters are. Thank you, Dan. Is there anyone else? David, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm David Friedman. I live at 61 Brickstone Circle. Speaking for myself, not in any official capacity for Brickstone. I'm in the bungalows, and so the current situation, if the chief was sitting on my back porch, Dan would be across the trail quite a bit. So this development, the yards would come close to the bungalows and my immediate neighbors, less than the width of this room. So therefore, we're concerned about the visual. So we've heard verbally interest in possibly a commitment about some kind of barrier, visual, either vegetation or berm or something. But I haven't heard a commitment that it will definitely happen. So I'm hoping that the board will see that that thing is addressed, because I think that a little bit of mitigation makes this a lot more workable for the immediate neighborhood.
Thank you, and I see Mr. Garwood again.
Yeah, I think I'll answer that in two ways. First is we talked and thought a long time about how to place these buildings on this lot. And one of the things we made sure we do is to make sure that our buildings are further from our property line and further from the trail than the brickstone bungalows that are closest to it, right? So that's one thing that we tried to do. We're further than they were approved to develop on the land, on their own land. The next thing is, what is the buffer or vegetation or landscaping plan on our side of the trail? And I think the best way to answer that is, of course, there'll be something, and that's the type of thing that gets worked out through the site plan review process. But at the very least, there will be trees and things planted there. Exactly how that looks like is what the site plan review process is for. So I don't want to commit to something because that process figures out what it'll be.
And that process is primarily handled by the planning board, who, although this is an incentive zoning approval that is done by the planning board, the planning board, the town board does the incentive zoning approval, but there is still a site plan review component done by the planning board, and obviously that's in collaboration with town staff. So thank you for the question. Is there anyone else that would like to address? Yes, come on up.
My name is Laura Tubbs, and I live at 6 Cattail Crossing, and I'm one of the aforementioned Bungalonians. My husband and I moved there a year and a half ago, and prior to that, we lived for over 40 years in the 19th Ward in the city. I'm very excited that home leasing is involved in this project. We lived very close to where home leasing was able to renovate a building in the Thurston Village area. And we're so impressed with what was done there and how carefully the site was cleaned up every day and didn't affect, or affected to a minimum, those people living in the area. And the improvement in the living quality for the people living in that building is immense. So I want to just assure people that I have seen them do a wonderful, wonderful job. I do have, and I'm very excited to have more housing available to folks who have fewer economic advantages than I do, or than many of the people in Brighton do. It distresses me to hear that people assume that those people have more problems with the law. Having lived in the city for over 40 years, I can tell you that is not the truth. I do have 3 concerns about the project. One is, I'd like a very clear understanding of how the wetlands in the area and the quality of that water will be affected by such a dense population. I feel very strongly about the poor way Brickstone handles the water quality, and I would like to know more, because I wouldn't want to see the wetlands degrade anymore. The other thing is, I have some concern about the density of the housing, and I realize that this may be a cost issue, but it seems to me that folks who need to have more affordable housing should also have the opportunity to live in the kind of density of housing that that neighborhood is used to. And I think that it's just more units than the area can reasonably sustain from an ecological point of view. And from a lifestyle point of view, I want them to have the kinds of opportunities for recreation and space around them that I do, and that most of the people in Brighton do. And my third concern was about the access in and out and the traffic on Elmwood, and I think that seeing your plans that is addressed. But I would really like to know more about the impact on the area and whether the density of housing could be reduced for everyone's benefit.
Thank you. Mr. Garwood.
I'll try to answer all the questions, but if I forget any, you've written them down. I want to first talk about the wetlands issue. Part of the project will require a conservation easement. We've done a study to delineate the actual wetlands, and there would be a conservation easement protecting those wetlands. That easement will also include, I think it's a 100-foot buffer around it that is also an additional easement to the town. So that protects those wetlands. In addition, our site plan review will have to, the stormwater plan will have to be reviewed and approved by the town. Our civil engineer will put one together. So there's a process that requires us to make sure that we're dealing with the water in a way that is meets all the standards for conserving that wetland. I'll answer the question about the density of units. And I think in this case, my answer to that would be what we're trying to do here is provide a variety of types of housing that provide many options for affordability. So we have 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom townhomes, and we have 1 and 2-bedroom apartment units. And so at 120 total across 10 acres, that is not a very dense development. We have a little bit more density because it's an apartment building, but we have a little bit more density because it's townhomes. But the benefit of that is that there's more green space, there's less ground coverage, and you end up with, I think, a better site plan. There's also some reality in the terms of number of total units that you need to make a project like this work, because we are building a whole new road and a lot of infrastructure and things like that. So 120 units is where we ended up. That makes the economics work, but that's not the real answer to the question. I think we're creating on this site the diversity of housing that Brighton is seeking in their planning documents, because it's not just single-family homes. It's a diversity of types. And I forgot the other questions. Oh, you asked about traffic, and we talked about it already. Did I miss anything? Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is 109 Monroe Parkway, and I'd like to ask the question, what effect will this development have on the school? Will there be families with school-age children? And I'm just curious what type of population will be there.
We're providing a range of a unit mix: 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3-bedroom apartments. We actually, I hope, I really am excited about the possibility of creating opportunities for children to be in the Brighton School District. I suspect a good portion of our residents will come from Brighton. This is how it typically works, but many will not. But we are providing family housing in Brighton, and one of the reasons for that is to provide opportunities for low and moderate income households with children to attend Brighton schools.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Didn't come with comments, but
If you could state your name and address, please.
Matthew Yanni, Howland Ave, 162 Howland. I didn't come with prepared comments, but unfortunately, being on a street that's often used as a cut-through, a shortcut, I think that could possibly happen between Elmwood and South Ave. So just take a look at that, that it's not used as a shortcut to Science Parkway. That's all.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board during the public hearing? As I mentioned, it is not the board's intention to take a vote on this matter. Tonight, we will listen to the comments that we've heard and look to take action at a future meeting, which could be 2 weeks from tonight, but we'll just have to see, how long it takes to process what we've heard and develop the conditions that are necessary for board action. So before I close the public hearing, is there any further, or would you suggest that we keep it open?
I think it can be at the discretion of the board. Ultimately, if the board feels that further information is needed to look at the incentive zoning application, either from the applicant or to allow the public additional time, you can leave the public hearing open. But otherwise, if the board is comfortable that it's received all the information and it simply needs to move on to the deliberatory phase, it can close the public hearing tonight.
Thoughts?
If we're not going to take action tonight, I don't see any reason not to leave the public hearing open.
Yeah. Leave it open for one more. We can leave it open for one more meeting.
All right.
Given the amount of comments.
And particularly in light of what I understand, I know as you described your timeline for starting construction, this is an important step in the process to financing, so I'm going to do that. We'll leave the public hearing open until our next board meeting, at which time I do expect we will close the public hearing. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, then I would, then I'd
Can I
recommend.
have a motion to table the public hearing?
Bill,
I'll make
I move that we table the public hearing
Until
August
28th.
August 28th.
until
2024.
August 28th.
Second.
It's okay.
Dan, please
I'll
call
get
the
him
roll.
I'll get him next time.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Maley.
Aye. Okay. Next is a public hearing concerning the proposed order directing that the owner of the property located at 185 Kimbark Road demolish the structure located at that site pursuant to Chapter 51 of the Brighton Town Code, which is entitled Unsafe Buildings. I'll give everybody a chance to move out here. I do want to talk a little bit about Chapter 51. Under Chapter 51, which is a part of our overall property maintenance system in the town has the ability to determine, with the input from town staff, that a structure is unsafe, not simply deteriorated or unattractive, but unsafe. Our code enforcement officers have made that determination here, that recommendation here. The town always seeks to have a property owner take responsibility for their own property, whether it's something as simple as mowing the lawn, or in an extreme situation like this where there is a recommendation that the structure has actually become unsafe. We generally do that through a progressive communication notice and violation process. We use good neighbor letters under our good neighbor policy. We let people know if there appears to be an issue with code enforcement, we send them a good neighbor letter. We hope that they will address it, whatever the issue may be. If not, we have the ability to go in a more serious direction, formally issuing notice of violation, which can bring them before town court if the matter is not resolved. Whoop, okay. Hopefully that didn't completely ruin the sound quality here. But if there is a serious safety issue, thank you, Dan. You're a jack of all trades. Where the structure is not merely, again, a moderate issue with unattractiveness or the like, but an actual unsafe condition. That's when Chapter 51 comes into play. The property owner gets notice, as they did here, that the property has been identified as being unsafe. That there would be a public hearing held, as we are doing tonight, to consider that finding and to determine whether the town board will issue an order under Chapter 51, directing the property owner to have 30 days to repair or demolish the structure themselves. And then and only then, if that fails to happen, would the town be in a position to actually demolish the property. But that's the stage where we're at now. I wanted to set the table a little bit on how Chapter 51 of the town code works. Did I miss anything there, John? Thank you.
Not at all, Supervisor.
And I'll give you, either you or Jim, an opportunity to say a little more in a minute, but I will again look to our jack of all trades, town clerk. Has the necessary legal notice of this public hearing been given?
Yes, Supervisor. Notice was published in the August 5th edition of the Daily Record.
Thank you. And I believe notice was also given to the property owner.
Notice was posted on the building, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. And that's pursuant to the provisions of the law. In that case, I declare this public hearing to be open. You have the report from the commissioner and his correspondence in your meeting packet, and I direct now that that be included in the record of the public hearing. But I'll ask either our attorney for the town, John Mancuso, or our Commissioner of Public Works, Jim Sprague. Is there anything you want to say for the record before we go to the public?
I think the only comment I would add is, as you stated, the process includes an inspection by the building inspector. That was done, actually, I think at the end of last year, and the conclusion by our inspector was that the structure is indeed unsafe at this point. So that initiated this process. So.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone here that would like to address the town board on the matter of the proposed order under Chapter 51 concerning the demolition of property at 185 Kimbark Road? Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I was looking at my screen to see if there was anybody remotely that wanted to speak.
Thank you. My name is Dustin Long. I live at 185 Kimbark Drive. I have thoroughly read Chapter 51. There has been no notification given to me except for the actual notice put on the door the Monday previous to this week. There's been no demands for any sort of repairs, if especially an inspection occurred without my knowledge at the end of last year. To date, I have received no list or bulletin of what needs to be done. I would like to find a cooperative way to work with the town to address some issues. I personally have construction experience. I started Long Construction, operated on Dewey Avenue in the city of Rochester with my brother Michael Long. We have platinum preferred status with Owens Corning. We are knowledgeable about properties up until the point where around a month ago, I came home to find out that my door lock had been changed and some damage done to my window frames on the outside because of alleged broken windows. The windows are not broken. The storm window on the outside is. Yeah, they have been boarded up. I have been denied access to my home to get any of my belongings out of it. I have been denied a place to live and sleep for this last month of that having been done. Again, no notice was given to me about who and why anyone did it. I have pretty bad anxiety disorder. So much so that it led to me at 37 years old, a year and a half ago, needing 5 cabbage bypass surgeries to my heart. Something that doesn't normally occur until someone is in their late 60s or 70s. But certain stressors certainly age me. I have needed some time to recover from that. And just when things were starting to look good around 3 months ago, I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease, which has kept me all but bedridden for the past 3 months. However, being bedridden, had I been given any sort of notice whatsoever, I could have at least made a phone call or done something to try to fix it up. The fact that I do have posted, please do not enter my property signs on there, like you said yourself, nothing about a look of a building. The structure itself would have to be unsafe. Why anyone without my permission went onto my property, went into my building and conducted any sort of investigation. I've been staying there since December 15th of last year. This entire time, anyone could have contacted me. I do own the house through an LLC. The LLC is, in fact, published on Duns and Broad Street, and that address is the address listed there. Not only that, but according to Chapter 51, Section 2, I'm sorry, on the second page of the printout, service of notice, it says that notice to repair or demolish shall be served on me, on the owner, the owner's executors, legal representatives, agents, lessees, and other persons having a vested or contingent interest in said property by personal service or certified mail. Return receipt requested, addressed to the last known address, if any, as shown by the records of receiver of taxes and or in the Monroe County Clerk's office. I went to the clerk's office yesterday. Nothing is in the clerk's office whatsoever. Nothing has been filed. Nothing was personally served upon me, unless, of course, you do have an affidavit of service saying that I was served. I just think that we have, maybe I have missed a good portion of this process, but any sort of notice I certainly would have been compliant with or done anything that I could have. So last Monday, I certainly got a big shock. In preparing for this today, I was admitted to the emergency room yesterday with a blood pressure of 257 over 177. So this kind of eminency of my property, as you say, this far into the process, why I haven't been included in it is a little disconcerting to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly, I will take this information under advisement and review it. I can tell you that notice was provided multiple times dating back a period of probably a year, I would say. This property has been being reviewed by the Department of Public Works, and I know we've had conversations several times, and notices were issued to the entities and individuals that we were able to publicly ascertain in terms of ownership. So I know this dates back quite a ways, and this notice posted to the property is simply the last step in a series of steps that I know the town has taken, but certainly, with those public comments, we will review those for conformity with, Chapter 51 of the code.
And I would certainly expect that, we appreciate you being here tonight. It's an opportunity to begin a process of collaboratively bringing the property back to condition in which it's in compliance with town code. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board on this public hearing tonight? Hearing none, I'm going to again suggest that we table this public hearing until August 28th. Christine, can I have a motion to?
The matter of 185 Kimbark Road, I move that we table the public hearing until August 28th.
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye, and again,
I believe the police chief might have stepped out with the individual to get the
Good.
contact information
Perfect.
for this person.
And Mr. Long will follow up with you. Obviously, we appreciate you coming in tonight and sharing information that we did not have. All right. Our third public hearing tonight concerns the proposed local law known as a local law to amend Chapter 113 of the Code of the Town of Brighton with respect to demonstration and special event permits. This is the ongoing continuation of the public hearing that was commenced back in June concerning a proposed local law by that name. That public hearing has been tabled several times now, and before I ask for a motion to remove that matter from the table, again, just want to say a few things procedurally where we're at. The matter has been before the town board for several months. The Public Safety Committee has had this matter on its agenda at the June, July, and August meetings of the Public Safety Committee. That August meeting was just held yesterday. I think this is the fourth town board meeting at which the public hearing has been open for comment. For people who have been following throughout, attorney to the town, John Mancuso, who had drafted the original local law, drafted a revised local law after some of the comments we heard at the first two public hearings, as well as Mr. Mancuso's continuing review and analysis of cases. And I want to thank you, John, for all of the legal work and research you've done in this matter, including those cases that Councilmember Wilt provided to you. The new draft of the law was prepared and available at our last town board meeting, and is what we are considering tonight. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear input from the public. We've heard a lot of it, but it will be an opportunity to hear some additional input tonight if anybody has any. So with that, I'm going to ask for Councilmember Corrado again to move to remove this public hearing on the proposed local law amending Chapter 113 of the code from the table.
I do move that we remove the public hearing on Chapter 113 amendments from the table and reopen the public hearing.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye.
Supervisor, just briefly, if I may, we also re-noticed this meeting on the August 5th edition of the Daily Notice, because it's been going for a bit, so I wanted to make sure it was out
And I
there.
appreciate that. Thank you. I would also note that we also received, now that the public hearing is back reopened, I would note that we received a communication today that is in your packet from Susie Ben Susan, that I would ask be added to the record, and I'm not sure that I had added the final two items of communication that we previously received. One from Gail Finkelstein dated July 3 items. One from Julie Gelfand dated July 10th, which I believe were remarks that Ms. Gelfand provided at an earlier public hearing, and July 15th from Jonathan Siegel. And all of those, along with all of the other materials you see here that had previously been included in the record of this proposed local law, should be considered to be included in the record of this public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to address the board tonight on this proposed local law for the public hearing, for the record of the public hearing? Yes.
I actually just have a question.
If you could, again, please state your name.
Laura
and address
Tubbs,
for the record.
6 Cattail Crossing.
Thank you.
I just have a question. I see on 2 of these public hearings the wording, and approve the SEQR negative declaration. What does that mean?
Good question. Thank you. SEQR, you know, the law and government loves acronyms. SEQR is the State Environmental Quality Review Act. SEQR is more of a process law in the state of New York than it is a sort of a substantive environmental law, but it requires that bodies that are taking actions, and that's an important term under SEQR, have the opportunity to make certain findings whether or not the proposed action will have a material environmental impact. And even actions like a local law that may not on their face obviously be environmental in nature, action under SEQR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, is required. So as part of any action to approve this local law, we will also make a necessary finding and action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act.
And a negative declaration means there is not an effect?
That's the Cliff Notes version of it, yes.
Or there's no
It will not have,
expected
it will not have a material adverse environmental impact.
Footnotes would be great.
Good question. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else that would like to address the board during the public hearing? And I see no one on Zoom seeking to address. Yes.
I would just like to offer,
Come on up when you.
I would just like to offer a statement from the Honorable Richard Dollinger that he asked me to put on the record tonight because he couldn't be here. Should I just hand? I have 2 copies.
You can read it, or you can simply hand it in, and we will include it to the record.
Read it. Okay. Members of the Brighton Town Board, my name is Richard Dollinger. I am out of town tonight, but I ask that someone from our community read this short note into the record of tonight's proceedings. It's a good thing I'm reading it. As a lifelong Brighton resident and one of its elected leaders in some capacity over the last 37 years, I applaud the board's decision to enact the proposed law on peaceful protests in our community. As I have said to the board on prior occasions, our children walking to and from school need to be able to get to school without harassment and challenges from adults. While our democracy approves protests of all types, the next generation of Brightonians need to be able to learn about our traditions and constitutional protections in a peaceful and productive environment. Based on my review of this local law, it balances the many interests of our diverse community. I know there have been amendments and compromises to improve and make sure that all voices in Brighton are heard. I strongly support the new law and urge its passage by all board members. Thank you. Richard A. Dollinger.
Thank you, and I direct that that be added to the record. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board on this matter? Following closing the public hearing, I will ask for a motion, and then the board will have the opportunity to discuss it. I see no one on Zoom, and again, I see no one here in the room. Therefore, I declare this public hearing to be closed. Councilmember Salzman, would you like to make a motion?
Bill, I'd like to make a motion to remove the public hearing on a proposed local law to amend Chapter 113 of the Code of the Town of Brighton with respect to demonstration and special events permits, and approve the seeker negative declaration. I'd like to remove that from the public hearing.
To remove that?
I'm sorry.
You want to move.
To move, yeah, thank you.
The resolution.
Move the resolution.
As proposed.
As prepared by the attorney to the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Sure, I have some comments.
Sure.
So I've been listening and taking in all of the commentary regarding the demand for restrictions on free speech in the 12 Corners. I've performed dozens of hours of research on case law and benchmark protocols and enforcement in other communities. From all of the information that I've received regarding the specific protests at the 12 Corners and the public commentary surrounding the protests, I simply cannot shake the notion that this proposed amendment is a solution in search of a problem to solve. Nothing about this law would have prevented the circumstances that unfolded in the 12 Corners over the course of 3 protests that occurred in February 2024. Nor would the law impact public safety, particularly among school children. Under this proposed code amendment, none of the protests would have required permitting, so there would have been no prior warning. But even the notion that a lack of prior warning is the reason that people are upset and wanting a change to laws governing protests is a falsehood. Because there was prior notification for the protests that unfolded in the 12 Corners. That prior notice was used to organize a campaign of hate, misrepresentation, and othering directed at the protesters. I want to take a moment to set the record straight on the requests that have been made of the town board with regard to addressing time, place, and manner restrictions, because it is disingenuous to disregard the considerable record that has been compiled at this point that demonstrates the motivations and intentions with which supposedly content-neutral restrictions were sought. The tenor of the commentary over the past 4 months highlights that the intention of those demanding restrictions on speech is to create a hermetically sealed, safe space for speech that we agree with, while breeding resentment and alienation towards dissenting voices. The question we are left to ponder as board members is whether the only way to protect protesters from vitriolic voices who want to criminalize legal protests is to silence them. To mix a metaphor, that would seem to be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Are we, as town board members, succumbing to a campaign of hate meant to silence dissenting voices? Are we, as a community, so completely unable to tolerate differing viewpoints that we need to impose laws to ensure that we do not have to listen to those voices? I can tell you that seeking to silence opposing viewpoints will only breed more resentment and alienation. If we don't allow others to speak, how can we possibly expect them to listen when it's our turn? If anyone doubts that is what we're considering, let me detail a sampling of the litany of comments that have been posed in this forum over the past few months that make it clear. On February 28th, Charlie Wagner said, quote, we have, in violation of Title IX, and I will digress and say I think he meant Title VI, our school children are being harassed. Now we've got the Middle East in the middle of Winton Road. Do we have Claudine Gay here now? We don't need to have this here in our community, end quote. Beyond mixing up Title IX and Title VI, the reference to Claudine Gay, the Middle East, and not wanting, quote unquote, this in our community clearly indicates anti-Black and anti-Palestinian intent behind the critique of the speech Mr. Wagner wishes to curb. Oded Spindell said, quote, this situation is about targeting by, quote, non-Brighton residents. This is nothing short of an attempt to terrorize our community, in particular our kids. These recent events are anti-Semitic and have no place in our town. We, however, here to say that the recent demonstrations by individuals who are, again, non-Brighton residents targeting Jewish people in our town is an act of anti-Semitism. Again, Mr. Spindell is incorrectly assuming that all protesters who feel a certain way don't live in Brighton and is othering those who are protesting as non-Brightonians. Ari Shokat said, quote, the town should work with law enforcement authorities to identify bad actors who are violent and who have deployed oppressive tactics in the past, end quote. To Mr. Shokat's commentary is clearly unconstitutionally seeking to target people for their beliefs. On March 14th, Meredith Dragon stated with regard to the restrictions that she wanted a mechanism for who and how protests happen. The thinly veiled othering and targeting contained in this sentiment was only further explained when she made the ominous and unsubstantiated claim that, quote, there are forces within this town that want to harm us, end quote. On April 10th, Al Cannell said, the protest, quote, cannot be good for kids and cause harm, end quote. Dr. Agnes Jonas said, quote, protesting truly can be a valuable way of making change, but this way of protesting in front of our children is traumatizing and harmful to them, end quote. Ari Shokat also said the kefias are, quote, terror scars, end quote, and falsely claimed that Dr. McGowan at BCSD had banned them from campus. He wants the town of Brighton to similarly ban the legal and constitutionally protected activity of wearing cultural regalia. Ben Rosen said, why are we letting people from other towns show up and do nothing about it? I'll let that sink in. Apparently, he would like the days when suburbs or sundown towns to be revised and people who don't look like they belong here, end quote, kicked out. Eli Futterman said, they have other places they can protest. They have other places they can protest, end quote. On May 8th, Sanjay Hiranandani said, quote, I personally believe the response might have been different if the targeted groups had been different. If it was African American students being protested by facing threats from the KKK or LGBTQ students from neo-Nazis, the principle should be the same, end quote. Apparently, Mr. Hiranandani is not aware that African American students have faced threats from the KKK in Brighton. And there were anti-BLM protests at the 12 Corners. Yet the town did nothing to amend our codes in response. If we act now, that will definitely send a message that we respond to certain forms of content-based speech differently than others. In all of the cases I've listed, and believe me, this is only some of the egregious, nonetheless free speech that was employed, and these comments do not comprise nearly all of the disturbing and sometimes blatantly racist statements we patiently listen to. The clear intent of the requester is to unconstitutionally curb the content of speech and/or unconstitutionally target the people engaged in the speech. Without protections for speech, particularly for disagreeable speech, our liberties are more easily threatened. In essence, it is free speech and not the subversion of it that keeps us safe. But free speech is important even beyond its value to our liberty. The free exchange of ideas, even ones that are disagreeable, is key to future prosperity. And I don't agree with a lot of what the Hoover Institution says, but the Hoover Institution research fellow Ayan Hirsi-Ali explains why. Societies since the Enlightenment have progressed because of their willingness to question sacred cows, to foster critical thinking and rational debate. Societies that blindly respect old hierarchies and established ways of thinking, that privilege traditional norms and cower from giving offense, have not produced the same intellectual dynamism as Western civilization. Innovation and progress happen precisely in those places where perceived quote unquote offense and quote unquote hurt feelings were not regarded as sufficient to stifle critical thinking. Without the freedom to exchange ideas, we are made less safe and less enriched in every sense of the word. It is not the job of the town board to legislate to pander to people and/or groups. The legislative acts that we take should be clearly intentioned solutions to problems. This amendment to Town Code will not make our community safer. But I think those of us who have always been targeted by law enforcement and civilians alike for disproportionate enforcement and vilification will definitely get the message that we ought not feel safe in this community.
Are there any other comments from members of the town board?
I also have some questions to pose to our attorney.
Go ahead.
So, if we were sued by New York Civil Liberties Union, will the courts examine the legislative intent of the law, and what information can they take into consideration in determining whether the legislative intent is malign?
And John, obviously there is a provision of the open meetings law that relates to attorney-client communications. And if you believe that these questions should be answered in attorney-client privileged session, please so state.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor. I was going to say something similar. That question, Councilperson Wilt, based on the nature of the question as requesting, I think, effectively advice of counsel in conjunction with potential litigation that may involve this law, I would recommend that we go into a closed session based on attorney-client privilege to seek the advice of counsel if the board wishes to do so.
Okay. All right, and we talked about case law protecting the ability of protesters to reach their target audience. And are we not unconstitutionally banning people from potentially reaching their target audience if we limit spontaneous demonstrations to only certain parks? Is this not a fatal flaw in the law?
Again, I think same as before, Councilperson Wilt, I'd recommend we discuss those types of questions in a closed session so that I can provide legal advice to the board.
Okay, and the law says all permit applications will be processed first come, first serve, but the law doesn't identify an upper limit of people, so if there are beneath the threshold of people, can the, beneath the threshold number of 20 persons, then would somebody else be able to seek a permit on that same day and at the same place?
That, could you ask that question again? I didn't quite understand that one.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry.
Says,
Maybe with
Yeah.
an example.
Yeah,
Maybe with
yeah.
a specific example and using a date and so that
Okay,
again,
so-
so that it's not, and if it's a hypothetical, again, I think there may be a need for a discussion of the question in closed session. But if there's an actual hypothetical that can be answered, I'm sure John will, but go ahead.
okay, so there's a permit application that has been submitted, and it's, I don't know, I guess if one has been submitted, so I guess it only applies to those protests that would be over 20 in certain locations. So permit application has been submitted for one of those locations that have an upper limit of 20 people. And then somebody else submits an application for the same date and time. So that second permit would be automatically denied? Or what
So, yeah,
is
so
the
that I can't. So yeah, the law is designed to provide first come, first serve. So if hypothetically speaking, at 1:15 p.m. on a certain date, someone had asked for, I'll just say, a permit for 25 individuals in 12 Corners Park, and then 2 hours later, someone submits for the same date, same time for 32 people. The processing of those applications would be on first come, first serve basis, provided that any other qualifiers of the law aren't otherwise triggered. Because I think there are other exceptions to the rule. If 2 or more applicants request the same date and time, and 1 or more of those held a permit during a 12-month period, then you could give priority to the second application, with the idea being to allow for different groups to utilize the area, and not to have one particular group potentially, I'll say, filibuster the space if they were applying, sequentially over and over and over again, to allow users of the park, different users of the park. So there are carve-outs there, but I would say the general rule is first come, first serve, which does track, in many instances, other jurisdictions and how they sort of deal with simultaneous applications if they are submitted.
But I also, because I think you were asking, one of your questions was, will it be automatically denied? And the answer is no. That is not what this law says, that the second request will be denied. And in fact, I will read from subsection 7 of proposed section F1. So it's proposed section F1, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, subsection F7, which reads, more than 2 demonstration or special event permits, says permits, should say permits, may not be issued for any park for the same date and time, except for Buckland Park, Meridian Center Park, and Brighton Town Park. So by implication, that means that 2, if other circumstances are satisfied, 2 can be issued for a given park on the same day at the same time. And in fact, more than 2 permits may be issued at Buckland Park, Meridian Center Park, and Brighton Town Park.
But there's no relation to the number of people, so we don't know. I mean, if the goal is public safety here, then shouldn't there be some cognizable relation between the number of people we're allowing in the box and or what is?
Yeah, so, and I'll, let me close the loop on the supervisor's comment, and then I'll address that question as well. I'll take your comment also one step further. Even after that threshold, so 2 or more permits, depending on the park we are talking about, it's still not an automatic denial, because the law further contemplates that the Commissioner of Public Works will also work with the applicant to identify a suitable location other than the one they are asking for if there is some impediment to granting the permit. If that's, maybe it's the third request, or whether or not, depending on the number of people that have asked to use that, if maybe one permit's asking for 125 people and then someone's, another permit's for 200. If the park can't house the number of people, then there's also a dialogue to try to locate an area where they can assemble and demonstrate in accordance with the requirements of the law. The issue of the numbers was something that was discussed over a period of months, I think in town board meetings, also probably in committee meetings and other meetings. Identifying a ceiling would preclude, the ceiling approach was discussed, and I believe it was jettisoned because ultimately the numbers of people are entirely dependent upon the applicant and what they are requesting. Because, for example, if somebody were to request 2 permits of 21 people each, that is quite different than someone 1 permit asking for 500, depending on the park that we are talking about. So necessarily the driver of the review of the application is going to be what does the applicant desire, and then a review as to whether or not if that park can handle that kind of density for whatever, the date and time that's being requested. If the answer is yes, then that permit should be processed. If there's some reason why that request is not capable of being processed, if, a permit was issued in the park, if it was, let's just say, if it was Corbett's Glen, and there were permits that were already issued and there wasn't sufficient space and someone asked for, 500 people. That might be something that Corbett's Glen may not necessarily be able to handle. That opens the dialogue up to whether or not there is a space that can accommodate a grouping of that size. But selecting an outer range is really, has the potential to be somewhat arbitrary because, again, we don't know what that number necessarily would be. We know what the thresholds of our parks would handle as a general proposition. But leaving it to public safety and, the chief of police, our, parks director to be able to assess and evaluate each request as it comes in to determine whether or not, 1 permit is 2 permits, 3 permits, depending on the park, the location, the day, things of that nature, or anything else that may be going on in the park. For example, if it's Meridian Center Park, if it's activities that are occurring at a certain date and time, if there are users of the fields, users of, the facilities, that may impact ultimately what, where it happens in the park and the number of people that can occupy it. So the system of the minimum is designed to say, at what threshold does the chief of police wish to be notified, and for us to evaluate whether the group is large enough to have the initial review so we're aware of it, so that notice is provided to the town. The upper limit of that is solved by the review of that application through coordination with law enforcement, because the importance is the notice. That's really what was driving the drafting of the law in the first place.
Okay, so I guess I'm failing to see the connection between public safety if we do not have any cognizable way to determine how the number of people in the parks is impacting.
I would say that the number of people that are requested would have a bearing on public safety, because I think and Chief, I'll certainly defer to you if you want to provide any insight, but the size of the crowd may very well dictate the number of officers that the Brighton Police Department decides to dispatch to obviously allow for safe assemblage. 21 people versus 50 people versus 100 people. Again, I'll defer to the chief, but I would expect that there would be a different amount of resources allocated to the demonstration or special event, depending on the size and the location and the time. Whether barriers are needed, other safety control measures, things of that sort.
And there are certainly other factors, available parking in the area, location in terms of the busy streets with not a lot of room to fit a given number of people. So I know there are a number of factors that could well come into play.
Right, and none of those, I guess, none of those are laid out within the context of the law. So it's, any decision would be kind of arbitrary, is what I'm saying.
I don't think it would be arbitrary at all. I think I have, as I said earlier in the evening, in the context of some remarks that frankly I found very troubling. But in this context as well, I have a great deal of respect and trust in the work of the Brighton Police Department and specifically its leadership team, and I don't believe they would make an arbitrary decision. I think they would take relevant factors into consideration in making decisions as needed. And if they didn't, there would be a remedy.
Yeah.
But I'm very,
Yeah, I mean, that specific question.
you may feel differently about the Brighton Police Department, but I feel very strongly that they do have a high level of professionalism and respect for all views and the safety of the community.
Yeah, and I just will add that that specific issue was discussed at, I believe, one of the public safety meetings. It's ultimately, the law itself is drafted in a way to provide objective measures for the Commissioner of Public Works to deny a permit. There's only there's a definitive list of reasons, and then it provides an appeal mechanism. So if someone is dissatisfied, there's a very strict turnaround time for an appellate remedy for that applicant, and reasons need to be provided by, in this case, the supervisor who sits as the appellate body to justify why it is that that permit was denied, or if he decides to reverse it, to provide those reasons. Ultimately, it's incumbent upon the town staff, in consultation with the chief of police and the attorney to the town, to ensure that the law is applied in a non-arbitrary manner. Just as we would with any other one of our codes, whether it's planning boards, zoning boards, it's our job to apply the law and ensure that our decision-making is supported by a rational basis. And obviously, I'm committed to ensuring that if something is brought in and there is a question as to whether it can be granted or denied, that we work collaboratively to, discuss those applications promptly.
Okay, and so suppose in reaction to this, the passage of this law, there were to be a protest demonstration that specifically did not seek permitting in protest of this law, then, and what would enforcement of this law then mean for our liability?
That is a question that I would recommend we address in a closed meeting, since that bears on the liability of the town and likely litigation evaluation. So I would say if the board wishes to go into a closed session to seek legal advice, I can provide that.
Okay.
Are there any more comments from members of the board?
I have a little to say. We take our duty as council members very seriously. And when our community's members come to us with concerns about their safety or the safety of others, it's our duty to listen with empathy and respond practically and appropriately. Times change, world circumstances change, and with those changes, our laws locally and at other levels evolve accordingly. We become aware of shortcomings or gaps in the laws that govern how we both uphold our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms while fulfilling one of the most fundamental functions of local government, and that's protecting the well-being of all in our community. We've spent 5 months in robust discussion and thoughtful deliberation here in Town Hall and beyond, and that discussion on my part has been in good faith, because we do need to seek solutions. We need to find ways to ensure everyone feels heard, feels as protected as possible, and that we craft something appropriate. And we've gone about that. We have carefully crafted sensible, reasonable legislation. Many thanks to the attorney to the town's good efforts and the input that he has taken from all members of this board, as well as hearing the concerns of the community. And I think what we have before us makes the lines clearer and brighter, the lines, those outlines of the time and place and manner in which we can all express support or disagreement with critical matters that confront our society. These amendments are not a knee-jerk reaction to hyperbolic outcry. They are thoughtful. They are thoughtfully regulating demonstrations and special events in a way that provides our public safety officers the ability to be responsive and supportive. It provides our community members guidelines, outlines, and a construct. Those who choose to test the new guidelines, that's their right. But as they stand now, I am comfortable with supporting this amendment. And when we learn that there are gaps or omissions, we work to amend that again. This is the process of governing. This is the process of protecting the safety of all in our community.
Bill, do you mind if I?
No, go ahead.
Are there any other?
I wanted to start off by thanking my colleagues, our town staff. The Brighton Town Board is not meant to deal with world affairs, the geopolitical war. I'm really proud to say that this board did not deal with international affairs. We were focused on preventing large gatherings in small places without the heads up, without making the necessary preparations. And I'd also like to point out that, I'd also like to thank all of you, the citizens of Brighton who have, for week after week, come and share their opinions. And, a lot of them have been very heartfelt, sometimes emotional. We are talking about the public safety of our community. There's nothing more near and dear to people's hearts than the safety of their children, of themselves, of their loved ones. And I want to thank all of you for participating in this process. I also want to point out that everybody who came and spoke and emailed and dropped off communication, I believe everybody complimented the Brighton Police and their handling of the events in February. And so I'm confident that a mechanism that we're discussing to notify the Brighton Police for large gatherings in small places, just a mechanism to help them better prepare is going to help keep our community safe. And I'll just say that this process, although at times it's felt a little contentious, it's what makes Brighton such a great place to live, is that tomorrow, there will be a Jewish student going to school with a student of Palestinian descent right there in 12 Corners Middle School. This is a welcoming community. This is a safe community, and I believe that this measure goes even further to achieving those goals. So I just wanted to thank everybody who participated in this process.
I mirror those comments and thank members of the community first for participating, and also the effort made by staff and my colleagues on very thoughtful consideration of this a very important issue. But I look at the statute itself, the ordinance itself, and particularly the preamble. Local law, excuse me, thank you, Bill. The preamble expresses what the intention is here, and it's a very valid and appropriate intent. It recognizes the importance of our right of peaceful assembly. First Amendment of the Constitution, also in the New York State Constitution, it says specifically there That's the very first two lines in the preamble. The focus is notice for the purposes of safety. And it requires a permit, quote, without unreasonably restricting expressive activity, regardless of identity or content of those expressing those opinions. The process of complying requires a very minimal effort with no burden or restriction on the right of assembly and speech. This is a very worthwhile requirement in our code, our local law. And I have no problem with it, and I'm in favor of it.
Normally, I would wait and give my comments when a roll call is held, but, and the disadvantage of going fifth is that I've heard my colleagues say a lot of the things that I would like to echo as well. But this law does address, I appreciate the input that came in, both pro and con. And by the way, I heard things coming from both sides that I don't agree with, and that's okay. But what I see here is a final product driven by a careful attention to detail by council, a showing of respect for the process, and a showing of respect for free speech. It's allowed in this room. We've heard it. I've heard things that I found very distasteful, but we heard it. And I'm confident that based on the work you have done, based on our discussions of this law, the revisions, the opportunity to review cases that you provided to Mr. Mancuso, that we've addressed issues that in other communities have tripped up laws like this. So I believe that this is a law, you know, we've heard people say this isn't going to do anything, it's not going to solve every problem. It's not. No law solves every problem. But what we're here today to do is listen and take action in a way that we believe will address not only the issues that were, as you point out, Councilmember Warner raised in the preamble, the discussions we've heard about the importance of notice for the community, and remembering that this is a law designed to protect free speech rights, but also safety of not only people in the community, but people who are themselves expressing their free speech rights. I think this helps do that, and therefore I also intend to vote in favor of the law. With that, I'll ask the clerk to please.
Oh, I have a
Go
question
ahead.
for the chief, actually. Chief, did you have notice of the protests that occurred?
I don't recall if I had, I do believe I had notice for 2 of the 3 protests.
Formal or informal notice?
Informal.
You heard it. Thank you.
Informal.
This will help systematize.
And I think, and I know there were some other questions and comments that were made, and not to belabor the point, it's always been about notice. I've been here a long time. We used to have really, and we still do have really good working relationships with the community. That's all I've ever asked for is notification so I can prepare. Staffing's an issue, obviously, and I do agree with Councilmember Warner when he pointed out the preamble. When I create policies in the police department, I always go back to the purpose. Health, safety, and welfare of the protest. That's all I ever ask for. I've been at several protests. I've listened to both sides. I've been in between both sides. I'd have officers in both sides of the protest. All I ever ask for is safety. I want people to be safe in their protest. Our job as a police department is to facilitate First Amendment rights, and we will continue to do that. I think that this, I'm not going to comment on necessarily on the law, but I've had input on the law. I believe it's a measured law. I believe it's something that is enforceable, and we will work as the permits come in. It won't be decisions. Decisions have never been made in a vacuum here in the town that I'm aware of. I will work with the team members when permits come through the Commissioner of Public Works. We'll work with town attorneys, and decisions won't be made in a vacuum on behalf of the police department.
Were you able to mobilize in response?
It's very difficult to do. Yes, could I have mobilized in a different fashion? As you know, we're a 24/7 agency. If I'm made aware of a protest, our shift changes are at 2 p.m., and I have to hold police officers over. It is a burden on the police department to do, not to mention if there's something else going on in town. Yes, I fortunately was able to mobilize. Could I have done a better job of doing that with the notification? I would say that I would have been able to do a better job.
And you had no notification, huh?
No, that's not what he said, Robin. He said he would.
Bill, may I have a conversation with the chief?
Sure, but I mean, this conversation is continuing at great length, and it is your right, but it is not your right to misrepresent the statement of the chief. And you misrepresented the statement of the chief.
Oh my God, Bill, please let the chief talk, and I'm sure he can stand up for himself. He's a very capable man.
So there were a total, if you're referencing the protests that happened at the 12 Corners, there were 3 protests. The first protest, I believe, was on a Tuesday. I didn't even know that one existed until after the fact. The other 2, I received no formal notification from groups. I do reach out and I talk to community members. And people hopefully people in this community know, I go at great lengths to create relationships in this community. Even outside of this community, the greater Rochester community, to build those relationships. But as far as formal notification, I'd have to go back and look through whether it was emails that I received or whatever, but there was no formal notification given to me that this is going to happen at this time. And there was certainly no formal notification that there was going to be counter protests at either of the events.
I find that stunningly implausible, because I knew of the protests.
Again,
published.
Again, hold on.
But that's, Robin, that's not, and I am going to address that. Formal, hold on. Please. I want to address this. This law, consistent with court case after court case, provides not for anybody to pay for a permit. It provides for a formal notice process. Not hearing about it on email, on Facebook, that's not formal, and it could happen today and not the next time. What this provides is a formal process, systematized, in which people holding large group gatherings, which might be protests, but of course, as you know, this law also relates to other forms of large gatherings. It requires not that they might have seen their email on a given day, but it requires that they receive a formal notice from an organizer of an event giving an estimate of how many people will be there. And in the context of the continued protection of free speech that this law will provide and the enhancement of safety, is consistent with cases, not only that, cases that you provided, and I believe, again, it is an appropriate response to what we have heard and what other communities have also heard and dealt with. And I know you have a lot of questions, but at some point, at some point we're going to need to call this question.
Yeah, and I will just say that I must have more faith in the police than you do, because I think that the police can respond to demonstrations that occur in our community with professionalism and the appropriate response needed without putting people through the paces of filing a permit.
Are there any more comments? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Nay.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Are you okay to do one more hearing? Okay. Because I don't want to, I think this will, yeah, I was going to say and I was going to then, okay, we'll take a 5-minute. Do you need a break or do you need to leave? Okay. Okay. Is there anyone here for this last public hearing or for any other matter that would need or request an ASL interpreter? Is there, and I'll ask the same question of our people on Zoom. I don't see anybody here at this time. But if there were someone who needed an interpreter, I would ask them to raise their Zoom hand. Okay, thank you, Allie and Heather, for serving the community tonight. Thank you. It's okay. All right, the next and final public hearing tonight is to consider a proposed local law amending the Town of Brighton flood prevention law, which is found in section 211-6 of the town code. And I believe they are amendments that were requested by the DEC?
FEMA. Yes, FEMA. So, yeah, as the town board probably recalls, a few months ago we had adopted more comprehensive revisions to this chapter. The flood mapping numbering was then subsequently updated, and so that then necessitated a technical amendment to the amendments that we already had passed, and so that's what the purpose of this amendment is.
Thank you. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given?
Yes, Supervisor. Notice was published in the July 30th edition of the Daily Record.
Thank you. Notice having been given, I declare this public hearing to be open. John, you were talking about it. I'll let either you or Jim.
As the town's attorney stated, the only thing that needs to be done now to this local law is the panel numbers of the flood maps have to be updated based on the most recent numbers provided by FEMA.
Thank you. The public hearing is open. Is there anyone that would like to address the board concerning this proposed local law? I see no one on Zoom, and I see no one in the room. Hearing none, I declare this public hearing to be closed. And can I have a motion to take action on the resolution prepared by the attorney to the town?
Bill, with respect to the proposed amendment to the town code, flood damage protection, chapter 211, section 3.2, requested for technical reasons by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and I understand the Federal Emergency Management Association, or agency.
That's correct.
I move that we adopt the resolution prepared by the attorney for the town.
Second.
Any discussion by the board on that motion?
Only to acknowledge the extensive work done by the commissioner and his staff in meeting the regulations of this requirement. It was extensive. It was a flood of work. Veritable flood.
Deluge.
Indeed.
If there's nothing further, Dan, please call the roll.
That being asked of them was very fluid. Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. We have no communications for the record, other than what we've already heard in these public hearings. Committee reports. Robin, Community Services.
Certainly. The Community Services Committee has not met in the intervening time frame since our last town board meeting. I do, as usual, have some updates from our Parks and Recreation Department heads, from our Parks Department. They have no big updates other than the town park playground installation was completed at the end of July. Yay. Parks have been busy, but they do have a small break with the fields until the fall sports season starts up in September. Other than that, they're on their routine maintenance schedule. From our Recreation Department, we want to thank all those that participated in our Bands of Buckland Summer Concert Series. August 13th was the final Bands at Buckland concert of the 2024 season, and we were entertained by Carlton Wilcox Live. The Town Hall Pool will be closed for the 2024 season on Friday, August 16th. The Town Hall Pool will close, and if you would like detailed information on pool conditions till then, please call 585-442-5620, or for pool closure recordings, you can call the recorded line at 585-784-5383. The second in our series of community bike rides will take place on Friday, August 16th, while the third and final one will take place Friday, September 13th.
A very lucky Friday the 13th.
Very lucky Friday the 13th. And Brighton Recreation, again, invites the community to join us and our friends from Reconnect Rochester for Bike Around Town. And I want to thank Councilmember Corrado for sponsoring this second and perhaps third.
We have a community member who has graciously committed to sponsoring the third, and we will reveal the name in due time.
Great, thank you so much. Again, the ride.
Thank you to our stenographer.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. It's a long night for you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. The ride is targeted for intermediate skill levels, ages 11 plus, and helmets and registration is required. So please join us and get to know Brighton by bike. Then on Thursday, August 22nd, Brighton Recreation is pleased to host the return. Brighton Recreation and our Public Works Department is pleased to host the return of Mighty Motors. We're calling all construction vehicle lovers. Join us as the Brighton Recreation Department teams up with the Brighton Highway Department to come and meet the machines that help our community, keep our community clean, safe, and beautiful. With parent participation, youth will have the opportunity to explore all different types of vehicles, including a plow, garbage truck, excavator, loader, street sweeper, and more. The full program will take place between 5 and 7 p.m. Refreshments will be available for purchase during this time, but there will also be a sensory-friendly program offered between 4 and 4:45 p.m. Space is limited and there is no formal presentation. We just invite you to don proper footwear, bring ear protection if needed, and come rain or shine to interact with our wonderful Highway Department staff who will help explain the function of each piece of equipment. And the next meeting of the Community Services Committee is next Wednesday, August 21st at 9:30 a.m. or immediately following our Finance and Administrative Services Committee meeting at the Brighton Recreation Center Multipurpose Room. Please access the Recreation Department through the Winton Road entrance, and as always, members of the public are invited and encouraged to attend.
And Robin, could you restate again the Mighty Motors date and attendance?
Yes, the Mighty Motors is going to occur on Thursday, August 22nd. And the full program will take place between 5 and 7 p.m. And the sensory-friendly portion will be between 4 and 4:45 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finance and Administrative Services, Nate.
I thought there would be a Australian breakdancing class taught. I had to get that in there. I know normally it's Councilmember Corrado who makes the sports references, but I wanted to make one tonight.
You can have that tonight.
The Finance and Administrative Services Committee last met on August 7th. Most of what we discussed is on the agenda tonight, but I did want to point out we are accepting a NYSERDA grant for $100,000, which is going to help us with 4 solar projects. So it's on tonight's agenda, but we talked about it at the FAST committee meeting, and I just wanted to point that out. Our next meeting is August 21st, right here at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you, Nate. Public safety, Chris?
Bill, Public Safety Committee met yesterday. The various safety services reported their experience year to date. Brighton Ambulance reported total calls for July of 676, and year to date of 4,733, which is a 3.9% decrease from 2023. Brighton residents transported, total was 259. Brighton Fire Department, calls to date, 1,414. They had 1 call of significance to Pinnacle Hill for an injured off-road mountain biker extraction, and they worked close in hand with the RFD as well. RFD, it would be BFD, I would assume, Brighton Fire Department.
It might have been the Rochester.
Rochester Fire Department.
Right on the border there.
They have 4 recruits in the firefighting academy, which started on August 5th. They will have a crew at the Brighton Police Department's open house, and they appreciate the follow-up by the Fire Marshal's office. Nuisance alarms at 12 Corners Plaza, where a new stove hood was being installed. The Brighton Department of Public Works reported that they continue with their street maintenance and pickup of yard debris and such. And the police department had calls for services to the end of July of 29,211. They had an open house last night from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and all of the partner agencies were there, as was I. And it was really an excellent turnout and a great show, I thought. They've also reported on 79 stolen cars to date, which is very unfortunate. Again, the focus seems to be the Kias and the Hyundais. Henrietta Fire District reported on year-to-date calls of 3,987, of which 486 were in West Brighton, with 68 calls in July with no calls of particular note. We discussed the crosswalk policy that's still in the works with the Public Works Committee, where it is hoped to be finalized and that it may be brought forward for adoption at our next town board meeting. Then also we noted that we would have our discussion of Chapter 113 of the Town Code, which we've done. The next meeting date is Tuesday, September 10 at 0800 hours here in the auditorium. The public are invited, please.
Thank you, Chris. Public Works, Christine.
Public Works met yesterday morning, and the public did attend. Open forum was full, and many questions asked, many answers given. I'll do my best to condense 2.5 hours of good discussion. Many thanks to the commissioner for extensive minutes. We had a resident who had concerns about the water issues in front of the BSN Sports Building on Monroe Avenue. It's related to sump pump discharge. It is a safety hazard. Town engineers have reported that the Department of Public Works has been working with the owner on the situation, and most recently a violation was issued, and it may have to proceed to the courts if not resolved. Resident inquired about the condition of property at Elmwood Avenue and Hampshire Drive. Code violations at the address have been ongoing for years, some addressed, some not. The resident asked that the town take more action to deal with the conditions of the right-of-way in particular for the sake of safety. Another resident sought information about major construction projects, specifically construction on Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road and proposed work on Monroe Avenue. The resident had questions about what prompted changes on Elmwood Avenue's layout as well. We noted that Elmwood Avenue was redone in accordance with current complete streets concepts as directed by the state and in accordance with the Monroe County Active Transportation Plan, and the development of that active transportation plan was done with extensive public input. The resident did note that she wasn't aware of that project and others, and asks for more opportunity to provide input on future projects. She also asked if studies were conducted before committing to the road diet on Elmwood Avenue, and would there be studies done for other potential road diets. And we did note that comprehensive traffic studies are completed before all projects, and in particular the Elmwood Avenue project. And last, the resident did request if follow-on studies would be performed to confirm the success or failure of any of the road conversions. And the Commissioner of Public Works will follow up with the county on when they intend to do such a study. We had another resident come and ask questions about the pool circumstances, and you heard this evening a great deal of detail about those proposed changes, and so we will not go on at length about that. We had another resident check in about requests for sidewalks on Clover Street from Roland Parkway to Esplanade Drive, and wondered if a cost had been calculated for the basis of forming a new sidewalk district to support that request. Commissioner Sprague offered that the recent sidewalk work had been focused on completing applications to the Monroe County Sidewalk Grant Program, and the Clover Road portion had not progressed at this point. And it will be, the calculations will be forthcoming. We'll continue to work on that. Another resident questioned the decision process leading to the implementation of road diets, feeling that cyclists were unfairly represented and biased the result, and felt auto drivers are not being heard. Same resident also had a recommendation for the design of the I-590 bridges over Monroe Avenue, that they be more decorative. They are a notable entrance to the town of Brighton, and asks that we provide input to the state on that project. In new business, we had an update on the Chelmsford Lane culvert replacement. Commissioner Sprague reported that the town has received a Bridge New York grant for the culvert replacement, and Town Engineer Hurley notes that the culvert will have to provide 125% of the size of the existing opening and have an open bottom for environmental reasons. This will be tricky to design, but our consultant, Ravi Engineering, is getting started on that now. In old business, we had an update on the Monroe County Grant Program for new sidewalks. Town Engineer Hurley reported that the application submissions are in for 5 segments in the town, and the county has asked for secret determinations for each. The expectation is that the issue will be on the agenda for our second town board meeting in August. Glen Road traffic concerns were addressed. Some signage solutions have been proposed. Councilmember Werner noted that an accessible parking space on the north side of the CSX bridge needs to be taken into consideration, and the committee has determined that the proposed steps for signage directing visitors to appropriate parking and turnaround should be shared with the residents before we go further. Our town crosswalk policy, as referenced in public safety, was reviewed in the Public Works Committee, and the final version with one small edit ready to go forward to the town board. So we should see that at the second meeting this month. Town Hall renovation project update. The current schedule calls for issuing the project for bidding in mid-September and accepting through October 16th. And A communications plan is in development to assist residents with finding town offices once offices here vacate. In county project updates, Brighton-Henrietta Town Line Road and Winton Road preventive maintenance project proceeds apace. And in relation to that, because we did not achieve a road diet on South Winton Road, the high speed there we may need to pursue a speed reduction in that segment after this project is completed and data can be collected. Other town project updates. We heard about the Clean Energy Communities Grant that we will hear again about this evening. Multiversity Trail Project. The steering committee met last week. Feedback received so far from the community has been discussed, and the consultants are now working on the on-campus events, those campuses being MCC, RIT, and U of R. They're aiming for September or October dates to engage students, faculty, and staff. These events, and the next public workshop for the community as a whole will be at the West Brighton Forum, to be scheduled for sometime this fall, date to be announced. And the entire project, the consulting component of the project, will be completed by the end of this year. Climate Smart Community Recertification. Our revised application has been submitted and appears to have satisfied all of the agency's comments, and it is expected that the town will be recertified following agency review. Bike Boulevard status. We are in process of establishing a second bike boulevard in Brighton, and it is the intention of Public Works to have signage up directing folks from Highland Avenue at Oakdale all the way through safe and low-stress routes, exiting at Avalon, where it connects up with the Winter Market at Westfall. East Avenue Sidewalk at Knollwood Drive. This is probably the most exciting thing we will hear about tonight. It's going to happen. It will be done before this, well, I shouldn't say before the snow flies, but certainly before the construction season is over this year. Bid package is being prepared, and all hurdles should be out of the way. And last, the annual resurfacing program. We heard an update, which we heard earlier as well, that the resurfacing program is nearing completion. Several small streets left to be milled and awaiting, or have been milled and are about to be repaved. We meet next on September 10th at 9 a.m. following public safety.
Thank you, Christine. That was an extensive report on a lengthy meeting, and I think
I'm sure the interpreters are glad they were not here for that speed reading.
Well, it's really demonstrative of all the work that the town of Brighton staff in a number of areas are doing in terms of continuing to make Brighton a more sustainable, walkable, bikeable community, consistent with our long-range planning, our climate action plan, our Bike Walk Brighton plan, our comprehensive plan. All of those things play into how Brighton has become the most walkable, sustainably focused community in, I would say, upstate New York, but I'll just speak at least for the Rochester area that we know best. So thank you for that update on all of those things. New business, reading and approval of the claims. Nate.
Yep. Earlier today, I reviewed claims totaling $1,071,141. I'll just bring this up because Christine just mentioned. One notable claim is the payment for professional services for the Multiversity Plan for $10,000, $10,422.50. So I've been up for a while. The claims all appear to be in order, and I move for them to be approved.
Second?
Discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Next, just Chris leaned over and whispered in my ear, and he's right. The one thing to add is big thanks to Senator Jeremy Cooney,
yes,
who is responsible for the funding, not only the funding to do that very difficult sidewalk project along East Avenue near Knollbrook and near the Allens Creek School, but also actively working with the DOT and all the parties to make sure that we didn't lose another season, that we were going to get this project done during this construction season. I certainly now fully expect that wouldn't have happened. But
Without
for
him.
Senator Cooney's intervention, we were beating our head against the wall, and the senator really made a difference on that. So thank you for reminding me of that, Chris. Next matter is the solicitation of bids for the Corbett's Glen aerial sewer line, and I'll leave that with you as well, Christine.
In the matter of the authorization of the solicitation of bids for repairs to the Corbett's Glen aerial sewer line and amending the budget by transferring $100,000 from the sewer department's engineering fees account to the sewer construction and repair account for said repairs, I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
This is a project that has really taken on a different form thanks to some initiatives out of the sewer department, out of the public works area in general. We now are going to believe that we can do work to preserve the integrity of that sewer line that does the Glen Culvert. It is as important a project as there is because of the environmental sensitivity of the area. And I'm confident that we now have a plan that will enable us to do that and make sure that Corbett's Glen stays the gem that it is now. So, go ahead.
And Bill, that's, I think, a creative, as reported by Brendan Ryan in the rest of the staff, that we had a $100,000 grant for a study and an estimate, and they said instead staff to take a look at the project and felt that we could address it with our standard lining process through Stantec, and recommended that we make this change and just move the $100,000 for the estimate and move it over to pay for the actual relining of the line.
Yeah, we actually didn't take a grant for a study. We have to pay for any project like this. We pay for the
Did I say the word grant? You're correct.
We pay for the study, which might have enabled us to get a grant for an extensive project, but you're right. They took a creative approach, and instead of spending that $100,000 study, we're going to spend it on a solution.
It's great. Well done.
We have anything further? Hearing, call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
President Malia?
Aye. Chris?
Next item is to accept a CERTA Clean Energy Community Grant totaling $100,000 and authorize the supervisor to execute the grant contract and authorize the solicitation of bids for 4 solar projects and authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with Geotherm in an amount not to exceed $24,600 for geothermal work at Buckland Park Lodge, and authorize the finance department to make any necessary budget amendments for those projects. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second?
Again, here we've talked about this earlier. This is an opportunity to use the grant, which is a grant, energy community grant, to put solar installations on several roofs on the Buckland Park Lodge, on the Buckland Park Concession Building, the Meridian Center Park building, the Town Hall Pool building. So there's some real good synergy here. And doing that project will help bootstrap us up to a high level of grant project through the Clean Energy Community Plan. So you mentioned Brendan's name, I'll mention it again. Kudos for his work. We have a motion seconded. Dan?
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Robin, the next one.
Certainly, the next matter seeks to approve the secret negative declaration for sidewalk projects on Monroe County roads. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Here we go. Secret for those of you who are listening. Again, we've talked about these sidewalk projects. We are going to be, again, the leadership of County Executive Bello in establishing this 50/50 grant program for sidewalk projects along county roads is going to make it possible for Brighton to fund over a mile of new much needed in the community. But to do that, yes, environmental review. We have submitted our application. Part of that review process, we will do this seeker review. So one last step, and hopefully we'll be maybe as early as next year starting to do some work on some new sidewalks. We have a motion seconded. Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. We next have, and we sometimes do this time of year, opportunities to set public hearings to extend the Town of Brighton Refuse District. Thanks to our refuse district, and more town residents and neighborhoods are a part of these districts, those neighborhoods, those residents are able to take advantage of the power and contract with a refuse hauler that we select through competitive bidding to get the best possible price. Currently, that hauler is Waste Management. But because of these, we get them at a price that's far below their normal residential rate. In fact, we're finding that most residents give $100 to $150 per year to join a refuse district. And I want to, applaud the residents, the neighborhoods that are joining. And I want to encourage neighborhoods to look at this. We're basically at the end of the ability to do it for 2025, but now you got a year. Get your neighborhoods together to think about the benefits of joining our refuse district in 2026 to get the benefit of that $100 to $150 of savings per year per household. Chad Roscoe in our Department of Public Works is the point person not only for refuse districts, but for many of our other districts. If you want to process now, get a head start on 2026. His direct phone number is 784-5224, and we appreciate all the work that he does to work with neighbors refuse districts. So with that, I will start, Nate, with you on the Evandale.
Yep. The next matter seeks to set a public hearing for the proposed extension of the Brighton Consolidated Refuse District to include certain properties on Evansdale Road. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second?
And to be technically accurate, most of the houses are on Evandale. There's also one on Glen Hill and one on Ironwood, right? Immediate proximity. We have a motion seconded. Any discussion? All of these are based on motions that we received that were reviewed by the assessor and by the Public Works Department. Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Robin, the next one.
Certainly, the next matter seeks to set a public hearing for September 11th, 2024 at 7 p.m. for the proposed extension of the Brighton Consolidated Refuse District to include certain properties on Highland Avenue. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Discussion on this? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Member Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Chris, the next one.
Is to set a public hearing for the proposed extension of the Consolidated Refuse District to include 13 South Winton Road. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
And finally, Christine.
I move that we set a public hearing on September 11th at 7 p.m. for the proposed extension number 15 to the Brighton Consolidated Refuse District per the resolution before us.
Second.
Discussion?
Only that we consolidate all of these into motion.
Of course, we used to have separate individual districts, and now these are extensions to our existing district, which saves some administrative costs.
Absolutely.
Make it easier. For example, one of these is a single property, but it's adjacent to the existing district, so it gives us a little more flexibility. But we have that motion. It's been seconded. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Matters of the supervisor. Last night was a very busy night, Chief, and all the agencies. Thanks for another open house. We had everything from the FBI to the Monroe County Bomb Squad.
State troopers.
A bunch of different agencies, a bunch of people that are working hard and committed enough to come out for 3 hours and talk to kids, talk to adults, give people the opportunity to see firsthand what some of the work of those agencies is. So thanks. And last night was also the last Buckland Park concert. Robin, you mentioned it. Out of the 6 we had this year, it was the first one where we had an absolute night. Last, because Carlton Wilcox was terrific, some great smooth art, and I couldn't stay for the whole show, but here are a lot of old favorites. So great night. Thank you, Becky Cotter, and thank you to the Recreation Department for putting on that series every year. Madam Attorney to the town, I know we've got some executive session or an executive session matter to.
Yep, that's the only thing I'd like to request, an executive session to discuss matters leading to the hiring of a particular person.
Thank you. Matters of the clerk.
Just quick, school tax collection is coming up soon. So I've received my first physical warrant today, so it's close. That's my reality check every year, when those pieces of parchment show up commanding me to collect said taxes.
But that's pretty early, isn't it?
Some of the boards have met a little bit earlier. So RH and Penfield are in. The rest will follow probably next week. Just as a procedural matter, we've added the drop boxes here at Town Hall before COVID, actually, but they really took off their use during the peak of COVID. Leading up to our relocation after the school tax cycle, I decided we're going to have to move the box at the rear of the building at door number 9. That area will be closed to the public during construction. That's short of having to put on a hard hat and get past a fence. That wouldn't have been a good location. So we're relocating that to the front of the police and court building. So it's going to be at entrance number 2, and it'll be mounted on the wall hopefully this week or next at worst. So just to let people know, we're doing that this cycle, so that if anybody gets lost, we're still here in the building to help them out. I figured it was better to get people used to it in advance rather than after we're already on Westfall. And actually, the highway department made me up a sign that will post where the box was, so that if anybody instinctively goes to there, the sign will redirect them to the front. The bills are going to say door 2. The pictures on the website and stuff will be updated. So certainly our messaging has been getting out there already, but like I said, I really wanted to get that move to happen while there's still people in the building, so if anybody does get confused, we're still here to help them out.
Good plan. Thank you. Matters of the town board. Thank you again. Although Heather and Allie had to go, we appreciate their work. Can I have a motion to go into executive session, as John said, to discuss the employment of particular people?
Bill, I move that we go into executive session to discuss the employment of particular people or person.
Second.
Deanne, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Councilmember Salzman?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Again, I do not anticipate we'll be coming back out into public session. Thank you to everybody that was here in person. We had a lot of you earlier. Thanks to everybody that's been watching us remotely. Next town board meeting, August 28th, right here at 7 p.m. Have a good evening, everybody. Stay safe.